That was the first discovery, big studies done that led to the World Health Organization in 2007 to come out that blue light at night was carcinogenic. And now the National Institutes of Health and various bodies have come out. But lo and behold, all the evidence is there. The science is very solid. But the problem is that the lighting industry is still just purely enamored with cheap brightness, basically, which I call junk light, just like junk food.
Hey, folks, welcome to this new episode of Healthy and Awake podcast. And today we're exploring a topic that I often feel is underrepresented in the health discussion because a lot of people, you say, what can you do for your health? And they'll tell you exercise and eat right, diet and exercise. That's what you hear just about every time. But nobody talks about getting sunlight or avoiding artificial light, especially at night. And these are things that are well substantiated in the research as having major implications on your health. And I don't mean just affecting your sleep. I mean, seriously contributing to things like diabetes and cancers and some other not so fun conditions. So it's definitely worth paying attention to these sorts of things on a serious level. And that's actually why I wear these blue light blocking glasses all the time. I'm looking at a screen all day for work. I talk to my clients through a screen. I do my interviews through a screen. I'm taking phone calls all day. And then when I want to relax, I'm watching TV or maybe playing PlayStation. And, I'm a human being. So I'm exposed to screens all the time. And, I know these things. I take as much action as I can by implementing strategies, but I know not everybody knows these things. And it's something I help my own clients with all the time. And so I figured it'd be a good idea to bring as much specific and valuable information to you guys on this topic as possible. And at least within an hour or so time frame, because there is just so much research on this topic. And there's actually a great place where you can find some of the newest, latest research on circadian health and what you can do to protect yourself. And that's actually from a brand new book by Dr. Martin Moore-Ede, and it's called The Light Doctor: Using Light to Boost Health, Improve Sleep, and Live Longer. So I reached out to Dr. Moore-Ede and he agreed to be on the show. So we started with the basics, the stuff that everybody should know. And as we moved further into the conversation, I really started to pick apart some of the nitty gritty details. And I think it's really interesting stuff here that you're going to love. But first, let me tell you a little bit more about Dr. Moore-Ede. He is an expert in circadian rhythm. He is a leading authority on how circadian rhythm works and their regulation by light with over 40 years of experience in the field. He is a former Harvard Medical School professor, and he led the team that discovered the human circadian clock's location in the brain, which is known as the suprachiasmatic nucleus, just as a fun fact. As I mentioned earlier, he is the author of The Light Doctor, and his latest book explores how light affects health, offering strategies for improving sleep and wellness through circadian lighting. So, Dr. Moore-Ede founded the Circadian Light Research Center, which developed evidence based healthy circadian lights. He's a corporate consultant. He has advised over half of Fortune 500 companies on health and safety impacts related to lighting. And finally, he is a health advocate. Dr. Moore-Ede is dedicated to educating the public on how to make informed choices about lighting to enhance well being. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention, he is a doctor, Dr. Martin Moore-Ede, but that is an MD and a PhD. So he is highly educated. All in all, he's a brilliant guy. He really knows his stuff when it comes to this very important aspect of health that everybody should be paying attention to. It's crazy how many people come to me to work on their health and like I said, diet and exercise with no attention to their light environment at all. And that simply cannot be if you want to be healthy. I mean, good exercise, yes, eat right, but also get some sunlight, avoid the artificial light, and really even a few other considerations, which we explore in this episode. So without further ado, Dr. Martin Moore-Ede. Dr. Martin Moore-Ede, thank you so much for being here with me today. I saw your book, The Light Doctor, and I immediately, as someone who really understands circadian health, and I try to talk about that as much as I can, I was really excited to see that and really excited to talk to you as well. So thank you so much for being here today.
Well, Mike, it's a pleasure. Look forward to this conversation.
Me too. And I think maybe the most appropriate place to start is very simply with what is circadian rhythm?
Well, circadian rhythm is something that's in every living creature below the sea, on the land, and in the air. Every living creature, including ourselves, has adapted patterns to day and night. In other words, various systems in the body. We happen to sleep at night, and most of the time, but all sorts of things in the body, such as hormone levels, cortisol rises just before dawn, getting you ready for the day ahead. Melatonin is a darkness signal. It's another hormone coming from the pineal gland in the brain, which actually signals to the cells of the body that it's dark outside. And then body temperature rises during the day, falls at night. So all those patterns are called circadian rhythms, meaning about a day. And when it says, people say about a day, why aren't they a day? Well, actually, because they're driven by internal clocks, they can run at their own pace. They can lose time in relative to a day and night if you don't get the proper signals from the environment. And that's what we've done in the modern world. We've moved indoors. 90% of our time is indoors. We do not get the strong daylight and sunlight that our ancestors had. We don't tend to sleep, or in the evenings, we're not in darkness like our ancestors. We've really messed up our circadian rhythms because of the way we treat light and because of the invention of electric light.
It sounds like circadian rhythm is kind of what drives our biological functions behind the scenes, and it's driven by our light environment, the sun, and essentially things can be thrown off because we're not living in accordance with a natural light environment, and that can cause some issues. Did I get that kind of
That's
right?
right. We have clocks inside us, which run around approximately 24 hours. There's a master clock in the brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, but there are millions of clocks in every tissue of the body. So to be healthy, you need to be synchronized. Your master clock needs to be synchronized with day and night in the outside world. And your internal clocks all need to be synchronized with each other, because if they get out of whack, that leads to all sorts of illness like diabetes and heart disease and also even cancers as a result. So basically, we are losing what Mother Nature gave us. 10,000 generations of our ancestors, were out in the daylight all day long, slept in the dark at night. Circadian rhythms were never a problem. It's what us now in the modern world that have messed this up with all our technology and all our lights and our cell phones and everything else.
You mentioned melatonin. Is that something that you take that and that kind of assists the circadian rhythm, or is there potential for it to disrupt, or is it neutral?
A lot of problems with melatonin. I mean, first of all, melatonin is a natural substance. It's produced in the body naturally, and rises to a peak about 2 o'clock in the morning in the middle of the normal darkness, falls again by dawn. So that's a natural cycle. You can take melatonin, but because it has never been a pharmaceutically regulated substance, you don't know what the heck you're getting in a melatonin bottle. It can be thousands of times more than it should be, or even contain no melatonin. So it's really a crapshoot, you might say, and therefore it's really not a viable substance. Now, it can be, when properly done, used to help synchronize us. It's helpful for people who are blind, for example, and therefore don't naturally see light. You can use it to help keep synchronized. But melatonin off those pharmacy store shelves is really a random thing and not very helpful.
I'm wondering, on this topic of circadian health, one thing that is often discussed is how light that we're exposed to at night can keep us awake. And it almost sends a signal to our brain saying, hey, it's daytime, you better stay awake. Or at least that's how I understand it. Now, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, what I'm just saying, it's actually not just it's keep us awake, but it does a lot more.
Right.
All the systems of our body that normally restore us during the nighttime hours are disrupted. So that melatonin signal is suppressed if we see light. The way our cells are repairing the cancer cells in the body are normally suppressed by that melatonin. You give us light in the nighttime, no melatonin or very little melatonin is going in the body. And as a result, all sorts of things happen that shouldn't be happening. So basically, it is something that it's not. So sleep is the most obvious thing. We're all aware of our sleep getting screwed up, but actually, in the long term, it's much, much more. It determines whether you're going to be obese, overweight. It determines whether you're going to have diabetes or heart disease and cancer. So people who are see a lot of light at night, or even work night shifts, or leave the lights on in the bedroom, very common thing that people do, have a much higher risk, double the risk of obesity, diabetes, heart disease, and cancer. So it's really something we take for granted, but and the good news is there's something we can do about it. And it's not just switching off the lights. You can actually have lights now that don't cause this problem, because we now understand why light is having this effect at night.
So I definitely want to get more into some of the specific like health issues and challenges, because I know, and I think this is not as often expressed as much as it should be when we talk about health. And I'm very thankful for you for your work and for putting out this book to call more attention to that. Now, I am right now a little curious on sleep, because I work a lot with a lot of different people. Sleep comes up so often, and health issues too, which again I want to get into. But one of the questions I was going to ask, you kind of maybe answered it already. And I started by saying it seems like light, even at night, can induce wakefulness. So is there anything that can induce melatonin production, or would that just be darkness?
Well, darkness, or more exactly, the lack of the blue part of light. So actually, the real breakthrough came, as long as we thought it was, until 15 years ago, we thought any light would basically do the thing. But the breakthrough really is to understand it's only the blue part of the spectrum that's causing this problem. So if you give people light that has no blue content in it, then melatonin rises normally. The clock is synchronized. So it's really looking at a particular, and it's a rather narrow part of the spectrum. Most of us look at lights and we don't realize that when we see a white or yellowish electric light or a natural light, we think that we're looking at a white light, but there's no such thing as white light. White light is something, a construct of our brain. What our brain, what actually comes into the eyes is all the colors of the rainbow: the violets, the blues, the greens, the yellows, the oranges, reds, in various proportions, come in from the light. And basically, what matters is what is that spectrum of light made up of. Now, we see it, of course, in the rainbow in the sky. It's a process of diffraction, where you diffract light, you see those. But in reality, what comes in our eyes are all these different, white light doesn't come in our eyes, all these different colors come in our eyes, and our brains interpret it, when it's balanced properly, as white. So when you look at a light, the real question is how much blue is it containing, and how much sky blue. It turns out a rather narrow band of sky blue is really causing the problems. It's around 480 nanometers. For those who sort of have give you a general sense of this, visible light, there's a lot of stuff that's invisible, in the ultraviolet we don't see. But visible light starts about 380 nanometers wavelength and goes to about 700. That's in the violet. 780 nanometers in the red. In between, there's an area in the blue around 480 nanometers, which is the potent thing that is detected. And why? Well, we happen to have a photopigment in our eyes, in the retina of our eyes, that's highly sensitive to sky blue light. And we can get into why. There's a very, very interesting story of why, if it's sky blue, why would use that signal? But essentially, that sky blue light triggers this response, is the signal that tells us whether it's day or night. So we can actually use light at night, provided it's got no blue in it, and we can actually restore health. So that's the solution. There is a bottom line solution to this thing that most people are rather vague about. It's not quite, we don't have to switch off the lights. We can use light. We just got to avoid blue like the plague once the sun is set.
And so I would imagine that's why a lot of people opt for using red lights at night.
Yeah. So red lights is, for example, are lights that are not going to contain any blue, or yellow orange lights. If they're really yellow orangey color, usually don't contain much blue. So, and in fact, interestingly, our ancestors use wood fires. They use candles. They don't contain any blue, less than 1% blue content in those. So we didn't see blue light until Edison invented the light bulb, but even his light bulb had rather little, about 4% blue. But now modern LEDs get their energy efficiency by using blue. This is what we've done to ourselves. We've solved one problem, i.e. energy efficiency. How much bright light can we produce with as little electricity as possible? But we've created another major health problem. So we're saving the health of the planet and doing our own health in. And I would suggest, and actually our own health is pretty important, because we need to be around and healthy, at the same time as making our planet healthy. It's no good having a healthy planet and a whole lot of very sick people.
Yeah, definitely. I know this carries over not only inside our home with phone screens and TVs, but even the streetlights there are some studies showing that they can cause harm.
Absolutely. And it's amazing how little light at night can cause the problem. So basically, the amount of light equivalent to a couple of candles in your bedroom, and you easily get that from street lights coming in through the cracks in the curtain if you're in the city, that has been shown to be increasing the risk of cancer and diabetes and other diseases, just people who live in urban environments and get these street lights. And the problem is, again, people are looking for very efficient street lights. They put them up and they are harsh, even bluish white sometimes, very sharp white colors, like those ghastly headlights. You really make you cringe when you meet them on the road. That's where we're going, because they're so energy efficient. The problem is they're the most harmful things you could do. Yes, street lights, our computer screens, of course, both of us are in front of computer screens right now. They're producing this blue-rich light. Again, there's no need to. We can create computer screens and have created computer screens that don't have any blue during the evening hours. Now, we happen to be doing this while it's still light outside. So actually, it's very appropriate. The other story is, of course, you want to see blue during the day. So no problem doing this podcast, Mike. Right now, I want to see as much blue as I can, so no problem at all. But if we were doing this at 8 or 9 tonight, I really would not be wanting to see this blue, because that's going to have the disruptive effect.
Hey, folks, are you ready to take control of your health and feel your best? At Avantia Health Optimization, which is my health coaching company, we get that everyone is different, so we tailor our coaching programs just for you. Meaning we're not just handing you some cookie cutter program. We're not giving you some documents and saying, hey, just here, go do this on your own. No, we listen to your goals. We hear what you're trying to accomplish. We learn about your habits and routines and time management and approaches and everything in between. And it is completely tailored to you. So if you're dealing with stress, sleep issues, weight loss, changing your diet, being consistent with exercise, or if you just want to feel more vibrant and awake, our health coaches are here to help. Now, for a limited time, you can try our health coaching for just $1. Yes, your first health coaching session is just $1. It's a great way to see how personalized health coaching can make a real difference in your life. And it is just $1 because I know a lot of people have never tried health coaching. They don't really know what it's all about. A lot of people still think that I'm a personal trainer, which is not at all what I do as a health coach. So if you want some proof about how we've helped people, you can check out the testimonials on our website from clients who have already transformed their health with us. Head over to AvantiaHealthOptimization.com, or if it's easier, you can go to MikeVera.com. That's Mike, V as in Victor, ERA.com to learn more and snag your $1 first session today. So let's get started on your journey to a healthier, more awake you with Avantia Health Optimization. Now back to the show. It seems to me, based on what we've just discussed so far, that as human beings, we should just be asleep when it's dark. And is there any situation where we can really be awake and healthy at night doing things that we might need to do?
Well, first of all, the world requires people to do that. There are at least 25 million people in this country, in the US, that are working night shifts of one
Right.
sort or another. So we rely on the emergency room doctors, the nurses. We rely on power systems, oil refineries, you name it, transportation. Um, we rely on FedEx and all that to keep us going. So, large number of people working at night in critical jobs. So, there the answer is, and we've been working over the last 5 years, installing lights that have no blue in them at night. So, automatically switching between blue rich during the day and no blue at night into about 65 Fortune 500 companies, including some of the very large ones, and putting these lights in. And lo and behold, that prevents the circadian rhythms get screwed up. In other words, they sleep better when they're off shift. They have fewer health problems. They're performing better. They're making fewer errors because what we're doing is giving them Mother Nature back. In other words, all we're doing is recreating Mother Nature by saying blue rich during the day, zero blue at night. And now we know the code. We know the secret code, as it were, to keep our circadian clocks in sync. Now we can use light, and we can enable those people who work the night shifts to have this healthier life. The problem is, as I say, this all came about. The first discoveries were when they found out that nurses working the night shift had 50% more breast cancer in young nurses than those who didn't work the night shift. That was the first discovery, big studies done, that led to the World Health Organization in 2007 to come out that blue light at night was carcinogenic. And now, the National Institutes of Health and various bodies have come out. But lo and behold, all the evidence is there. The science is very solid. But the problem is that the lighting industry is still just purely enamored with cheap brightness, basically, which I call junk light, just like junk food. So you can it's cheap, it's easily available, it's bright, it keeps your utility bill low, but it does a huge amount of damage. And I think that's going to be a big issue for those companies. There's still 99+% of their lights are these junk lights they're selling. The industry really has to pivot. But to do so, people like you and I and all your listeners have to be asking for it, because there are two sides of this. The industry can say, well, we can produce healthy lights, but if no one wants to buy them, and they're always a little bit more expensive when something's new, then if everybody wants to buy the cheapest light, then you don't solve the problem. So it's really a two-sided thing. Industry is now very much aware of this. I have a lot of people reading my book and are aware of this in the industry. I pointed out the liability risks of the lighting industry. They're going to get into a big problem like, what happened to all the companies that made asbestos, the huge bankruptcies that happened because of the liability suits from the cancers there. This is going to happen, and they're aware, but on the other hand, they can't make it happen by themselves if the general public doesn't ask for it. And that's the reason I wrote this book, The Light Doctor, to basically get that message out and make it readable and accessible to everybody. So we're creating a movement, essentially, an awareness. The science is done, the technology is solved, but it's got to be adopted.
We've talked a lot on this show about the military industrial complex, the medical industrial complex. Never in my life have I considered the light bulb industrial complex. Man, that got me thinking.
Huge industry, $150 billion industry, right? It's huge. And and it's dominated by, the chips. A lot of these LED chips made in Asia, mass produced in Asia. They can make things really cheap. And the problem is, what's cheap isn't good for you right now. That's the sad thing.
It seems like what you said you're working on with helping companies fix their lighting, and I've actually seen research that shows in hospital settings it produces more favorable patient outcomes for for installing basically natural light rhythm technology in there. Have you seen anything on hospitals working on implementing this type of tech?
Oh yeah, there are 65 plus hospitals in Europe that have installed circadian lighting and showing benefits in all sorts of metrics. We know also that the amount of light you see when you see it is absolutely critical. I mean, fascinating study, by the way, multiple studies showing that when you take one of the problems that occurs when you get the wrong light at the wrong time, wrong blue at the wrong time, is increased anxiety and depression. All right. So you admit into a psychiatric ward, psychiatric hospital, bunch of patients, severe anxiety, depression, they need to be medicated, need therapy and so forth. And you admit them in, and one half of the rooms are facing south and east. They get the morning sun. The other half of the rooms, the other side of the building, are facing north and west. They don't get any morning sun. Guess what? The patients admitted to the morning light, the ones that get the morning light, get out of hospital half the time. They've got the same doctors, the same medications, same therapy, same type of diseases or psychiatric disorders, but out in half the time because morning light's very critical. So the other side of the story is we've talked about at nighttime is getting outside, outdoors in the morning or getting exposed to a lot of good morning sunlight, daylight is actually critical. And that is a critical time for the circadian clock because it helps really set it and synchronize it. We're really synchronized to dawn more than dusk. And so that's a critical time. So that's part of the story, getting that daylight too. So what you can do besides sleeping in the dark is make sure you get out in the morning. It don't have to be, you can go for a run, you go for a walk, you could even sit on the park bench, whatever, but just have your breakfast outside. Do anything. But if you're getting out for half an hour in the morning, huge impact. And, guess what? The people who spend more time outdoors live longer. And the effect, the big studies now, 29,000 Swedish women, those that, and then tracked for 10, 12 years and to see how they do. Interesting, it was a study on skin cancers. They thought, well, the people outside are going to get more skin cancers. Let's see what happens. When in reality, they ended up living longer. Less diabetes, less heart disease, the people who went outdoors. And the effect is as large as whether it was smokers or not smokers. It's a huge effect, just getting your clocks right. So we got a lot of underlying illness and ill health and malaise. And it's not just, people with major diseases, but just the rest of us, our sleep, our well-being is hugely affected by this. And it's, and so blue light, if you think of it, at night is an environmental pollutant. But when you think about it, other pollutants we deal with things like PFAS chemicals, for example, the forever chemicals or microplastics everyone's worried about, all the harm they're doing. They're extraordinarily difficult to get rid of. But this is light. All you have to do is change the darn light bulb. So, it's simple, and you can fix this problem. So we've got a huge amount of health and well-being that we can create by really addressing the light we see and when we see it.
I'm almost a little surprised to hear that hospital study that you described because my institutional review board alarms go off when I hear that. It's like, well, we know that blue light is harmful, so we're going to take one group and basically not pay attention to their lighting at all. And the other group, we're going to give them favorable lighting. Maybe in 20 years, we'll look back and be like, okay, maybe that wasn't the most ethical thing to do, to subject one group.
We shouldn't be doing, any new treatment has to be done with trials, right? In other words, You think you've got a theory, but you have to go and test it. And basically, and all medicine is based on clinical trials where half the people, get some of their treatment and the other half don't, and it should be blinded. But, so that always happens, and that gives you, when you do have that data and you know the result, then it's unethical not to follow it. And basically, the whole principle of medicine, one of the principles that Hippocrates came up with in the way back old Greek BC days was do no harm, physician, do no harm, right? Well, physicians are doing a heck of a lot of harm because we're just putting this bright blue red light 24/7 in our hospitals. And it's amazing. And looking back years from now, people will say, what on earth were people thinking of when the science was so clear?
With that, with like science being clear, one thing I've heard from Dr. Jack Kruse, who also talks about circadian health, is that basically says that most science should be thrown out the window because they don't take into account that variable, blue light. So we might be testing certain medical drugs that might give compromised results because we didn't actually account for that variable. Do you think that is too far, or any thoughts on that?
I just had a comment the other day from one of my readers who I have a column on Substack, for example, and they came back, oh my gosh, I've just realized all those experiments, animal studies, cell cultures I did over the years were really junk, given the fact I did not control the lights. And that's right. It is not something people think of. We take electric light for granted, and we shouldn't. It's so easy. Flicker the switch on the wall, the lights come on. It's so easy, and we just don't think about it, and we can't see the blue. And that's one of the other things I'm trying to get out for people to understand is you can actually figure out whether a light has got blue or not. You use, one of these diffraction type glasses here, I wear, which actually is just this is a paper frame, so it's really cheap. But you look at the light through this thing and you can instantly see whether it's got blue in it or not. So it's a manageable task. And so it's a really question of giving people the tools they need to figure out what lights they've got and where to get them.
It sounds like the opposite of the ones that I'm wearing, because when I put on these blue light blocking glasses, if there is like, I could be looking at an actual blue light and I put these glasses on, it looks like it's off completely.
Yeah. No, I was admiring your glasses, and I was thinking they're very much down the red end of the spectrum, and how I don't know what the spectral. We worked a bit on glasses because one of the questions is, what do you do when, for example, we're often in spaces we don't control, right? We're in somebody else's building, we're in a resale store, whatever. Then, in fact, you really don't have control of the lights. There, the answer is to use blue blocking glasses is a solution. It's got to make sure it blocks the right blue, because there are different grades of these glasses. Many of them sold, by the way, by opticians. They claim to be blue blocking. They give this very light blue tint to them. You add $200 to your eyewear prescription and give you a blue tint. They do nothing good at all because they don't block the right blue. There's a lot of different color blues, from violet blues, indigos to royal blues to sky blues to aqua. You've got to make sure you're blocking the right blue, and glasses that are down in the red or in the orange red end of the spectrum are more likely to do that.
Yeah, I've noticed that at the eye doctors, they look like normal clear lenses. And the way I saw it is that if it blocks even 1% of blue light, they would get to call it blue light blocking glasses because it blocks just a little bit. And I mean, these are the best that I found. Actually, these are the daytime ones, and I do have the even darker ones.
I was going to say,
yeah, for night. So these are even more red. Hey, folks, just a quick pause on our discussion today because I have something important to share. You know that I'm always in front of screens because I do content creation. My health coaching is done online. I'm doing the podcast. I'm writing, all these different things. And that artificial light can be disruptive to the circadian rhythm, and that can impact your health pretty severely. So that's why I wear Bond Charge blue light blocking glasses. It's not just a stylish accessory, but it's really a daily defense against eye strain, headaches, disrupted sleep schedules, and really that circadian rhythm that I'm trying to protect. So it does protect your eyes. It does improve your sleep. It does help maintain your circadian health. And honestly, I've experienced fewer headaches and just a better overall sense of my health. I feel healthier when I wear these. And yeah, they do look cool as well. I get compliments all the time, especially when I wear them out at a restaurant or something like that. So, for those who are looking to boost their health in this digital age, I've got some good news. As part of the Healthy and Awake community, you can get 15% off by going to the show notes, clicking the affiliate link, and using the coupon code Healthy and Awake with dashes. So that's healthy dash and dash awake. And you can get 15% off of these very cool bond charge blue light blocking glasses. And that's a great way to enhance your daily health routine and your style. Now let's dive back into the episode. Right now, I'm looking out the window. It's beautiful. It's bright. I'm spending as much time in the sunlight as I can. And I think being Puerto Rican helps because I could sit in the sun for 6 hours, direct sunlight, and I'm good. And so I really enjoy it. But earlier, you mentioned how some people might not have control over their space. I'm actually in that situation now. I'm in a rental house. And so I moved in, and I know other people deal with this as well. LED lights fixed into the ceiling. There's really not much I can do about that. They're very bright. And so what I did, I actually bought on Amazon red film and I literally taped it over the lights. And so for all I know, I mean, maybe that's doing nothing, but it seems to at least create an ambiance that helps me sleep. And it does seem to also at least reduce some of the blue light that might be emitted. Do you think I'm wasting my time there or does that do anything?
No, I think it's a good idea to put the other solution is to put filters on things, and that's certainly a mechanism. You should test it. I don't know if you've ever used a spectrophotometer or anything, but one of these handheld spectrophotometers, it's about the size of an iPhone, a device like this that would make it over here.
Right.
Where basically it pointed at the light, and then you get on the screen, you'll get the composition of the light you're seeing. Good to check that you actually are blocking the right blue because that's the key to this thing.
Gotcha. Well, these glasses are pretty dark and they seem to do the trick. A lot of the clients that I work with, they end up buying them also and they really love it. But it does seem, do you think it's accurate to say this? It does seem like with regard to light, we're doing everything backwards. We go out in the daylight and we put on sunblock, we put on sunscreens, we block ourselves from the sun as much as we can. And then we come in at night and we totally expose ourselves to all the artificial light. It just seems totally backwards to me. I mean, should we just switch our approach?
Well, it is. We've really got it's just like nutritional diets, right? We really need a light diet, right? And the light diet is to get exposure to bright sunlight in the mornings. When I go out in the mornings and go for a walk, as I do every day, I don't put sunglasses on. I want to get the full benefit of the daylight at that time. Now, I would say there are issues with very bright light can fall. There are parts of the blue spectrum, a different part of the blue spectrum, that can cause damage to the retina when it's very bright sunlight. So there is reasons to use, eyewear during the peak of the day, particularly, to really control that in a bright sunny day. Obviously, it's a cloudy day; you don't need it. And then, as you get into you want to indoors, you want to enhance the amount of blue-rich light you get. Being close to a window, people sleep half an hour better at night, longer. The executive for the window office, right, gets to do it. The guys in the cubicles that are under artificial light, which is usually fairly dim to save electricity, they are, sleeping a lot worse. And then when you get into the evening, you want to make sure the lights if you use lights, that you make sure they're zero blue, particularly for the 3 hours before bedtime. And then at night, sleep in the dark if you can. But, if you need some sort of light to basically find your way safely to the bathroom or whatever else, then you can buy these little lights that are, you can plug into a socket that are yellow or red in color, or orange or red in color. And you can see perfectly well with them, but they're not providing anything that's going to disrupt your circadian rhythms.
Well, this might be a tough question. This might be the easiest question. I don't know. I'm actually not sure. But your book obviously has a lot of very valuable information. If people read it, it's going to change their health for the better. Now, if I'm reading this at 1 in the morning when I should have no blue light, if I'm reading this on an iPad, do the benefits outweigh the risks?
Well, the answer is you can actually get little reading lights if you buy the paper book, right, which is available on Amazon, of course. But if you buy the paper book, you can get little reading lamps, you clip-ons, which emit only yellow-orange light, so you can read that. If you're reading on a computer screen, then you can put a screen over the top of it, or the trouble is what Amazon or Google or the other iPhone manufacturers and so forth, smartphone manufacturers, that they make the yellow the lights. Unfortunately, they do a rather half-baked job of it. They change the color of the lights, and this is another thing. It's not all about color. It's about what actually is the amount of blue that's coming through. So I can change the color of a light without actually changing the amount of blue in it. And that's a problem. So basically, but one of the things people use is called color temperature, or CCT. And they say, well, if a light has got a color temperature, of 3,000 or 2,700 Kelvin, then it's better than a light that's got 4,000, 5,000 Kelvin. Well, that's true, but only to a limited extent, because most of the color temperature changes are relatively ineffective unless you get to very low color temperature. So you've got a light that's got color temperature of 2,000 Kelvin or below, that is probably pretty good. It's probably got very little blue in it. But again, that's one of the things. But yes, the other thing is, I don't know whether I'd recommend reading a book at 1 o'clock in the morning, unless that's your thing. I'd actually think it would be better to read it at a daytime and get some sleep at night. I wouldn't want to have you sleepless just because you're reading my book.
Right, right. And of course, there's always apps. Flux is one, and Iris is another that can reduce, or at least supposedly reduce, some of the blue light in the computer screen. You mentioned earlier, much earlier, the technology they're working on from laptops that are not blue lit. I think you mentioned that.
Yes.
The Kindle e-reader, the original very first one, used to be that, I think, the same tech where it wasn't backlit. It was actually just it looks like an ink display on a screen, and it's lit just by the light in your environment. And I do want to get there is a creator, this guy invented the new computer and tablet that's going to have that no blue light technology. I want to get him on the show because it does look interesting. And all the tech that we use now has blue light. You can't avoid it.
Right. Yeah, if it's got LED based, which most of it is, yeah,
Right.
Yeah, it'll have that blue light in it. And yeah, I know there are technologies, and there are now computer screens. There'll be a Kickstarter going up in, I believe, in September. I've got a website called circadianlight.org, which keeps track of some of these things. But the Kickstarter should be starting in September for regular computer screens, the sort of full-scale desktop computer screens, which automatically, depending on the time of day, will either be blue rich or will be blue free. And they do it for you. The whole point of it is making it automated, because last thing you want to do is have to remember, oh gosh, I should be turning the lights from one stage to another. It really should be like your heartbeat or your respiration. It works best when left to its own devices. I'm not thinking about my breathing until I start talking about it. It takes the rhythm. Those rhythms are normal and natural and automatic. This should be automatic too. So any good circadian light should be automatically changing and shouldn't require the user to be switching into one mode or another.
Well, when the Kickstarter is ready, feel free to send it over and I'll share it with my audience. I have some people in my life who are pregnant, and I know circadian health or circadian rhythm seems to involve every aspect of health. Are there any particular considerations that a pregnant woman might want to think about?
Well, absolutely. It has the health of the baby, the health of the mother are really critical. And so that if the mother has very strong circadian rhythms, it leads to a healthier baby. So basically, the mother taking particularly care of the lighting environment, blue rich days, blue free nights, is really critical. It also can have effects on the labor, and when labor occurs, that's actually a trigger on the blue if you get the wrong blue at the wrong time. So there are some things there too. So this whole area we're learning about, and certainly, um, babies should be exposed to the natural world of lighting, even in an electric lit world with blue rich days and blue free nights that will help them get themselves synchronized. Because with a baby in an environment and the light's always on because the mother's nervous to wants to look in on the baby, you're not doing the baby a service because you're not giving them a strong circadian cue, which is so essential for health and for well-being and growth.
Wow, just another reason that the hospital setting might need to be updated a little bit. I've seen, I think, some research that shows how different types of light, like red light, blue light, green light, can affect people's moods. And I know even in certain cities, I think in Japan, they tested setting all the street lights with different colors just to see how it would change people's behaviors. Do you have any knowledge or thoughts on how light can actually maybe affect people's decisions and the way they think and their mood?
Yes, I mean, we talked about this light spectrum, right, with all the colors of the rainbow. What each of those individual color wavelengths actually has quite clear effects on our health and well-being and our psychological mood and so forth. So, for example, violet light is very good at disinfectant effects. It kills bacteria and viruses. Um, Certain types of blue light are actually will reverse jaundice. When you get to green light, it's very interesting. Green light is actually reverses pain, reduces stress, and so people with migraines now they're using green light, bathing them in green light, and that's got some pretty good science behind it, showing the effect. And then when we get up to red light, that actually has big effects on healing. Um, and so, for example, scars on the skin heal faster with red light. Hair in your head grows. So and also red light penetrates much more deeply in the body than other color lights, and that's being used for now helping treat a number of diseases. Something called photobiomodulation. So there is a huge thing we're learning about. The secret of health is in the light spectrum you're receiving and the various effects it has. Now, the beauty about going out in sunlight or daylight is you get the full range of all the spectrum, and you get the ultraviolet, and you get the infrared. When you're indoors, you get a very narrow spectrum. It's just the visible part of the light spectrum, and it's really distorted with spikes of blue when you don't want them, and not enough red, and not certainly not enough infrared. The old incandescent light bulbs used to emit a lot of infrared. I think we've lost something with the lights that produce no infrared now.
Gotcha. So just to recap that, all the different isolated light spectrum or the colors of lights, they all do something seemingly very specific. And we can also get all of those at once just by getting the sun, basically. So when we use
Absolutely.
a red light device, or even I think they have blue light devices too for cognition and things like that. Really, that's kind of like a supplement, just like taking a fish oil supplement instead of eating fish. It's almost like a supplement for the sun that we could maybe get outside.
That's right. In other words, I'd say more and more, but really is essential. That's why sunlight is so incredibly beneficial, particularly morning sunlight,
Hmm.
for example. But yes, it is the colors, and people just got to realize it is those colors that we are actually not aware of that are coming out of a white or yellowish light. That's the secret of this thing, understanding what is the spectral mix, spectral composition of the light, the wavelength composition. That's all the key, and using it for treatment of different illnesses.
If you had a magic wand and you could change three things about just the world, the environment, what would you change?
Well, first of all, I would change the way we measure energy efficiency. We use energy efficiency is measured by lumens per watt. Lumens is the brightness of a light, and watts the amount of electricity, and that drives all sorts of government policy. Trouble is, lumens only measures the green and the yellow. It does not measure any blue, does not measure any red. So it is really not a healthy measure of light. So all those rules about lumens per watt should be changed. And we should focus on the health of the light and not just the cheap brightness of the light. That's number one. That would be a big, big change. Secondly, I'd educate people, have people aware that, get the word out. And that's, get the world to buy my book and use the wisdom in it. It's written for the general public, and I'm getting great responses from everybody from, just health conscious general public who are not scientists, all the way through to the scientists. I mean, this thing and the lighting industry themselves, but people need to read it and adopt it, and we need to make a big change. And you want a third thing? Well, I think we just need to know the basic rules. We need to get back to our ancestors' world where we saw bright blue rich light during the daytime and no blue light during the nighttime hours.
I think that's such a perfect place to end. And maybe hopefully we'll get to do this again sometime, because I do think it's so important for people to read your book. I really do. I have to say, I've done a lot of these episodes. I've talked to a lot of people. I think this is really one of the most, if not the most valuable episode for people to listen to. And so I'm going to promote the hell out of this and make sure people see it, make sure people buy your book. Dr. Moore-Ede, thank you so much. Is there anything else that we didn't cover yet today that maybe we should?
Oh, no, I think we covered it pretty well. There's some good things. But thanks, Mike. It was a great conversation. I knew it would be.
Thank you. Folks, stay healthy, stay awake. Hey, thanks for listening to this episode of Healthy and Awake Podcast. Please remember to leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify or Apple, or if you're watching this on Rumble or YouTube, please be sure to give us a thumbs up and leave a comment down below. Let us know what you thought, or if you had any questions based on what we talked about in this episode. And of course, it couldn't hurt to share it with your friends, those who maybe are awake, or those, of course, who are waking up.